4 things you should know about watercolor, but you might be too afraid to ask. The first is that when we're mixing custom colors, things can get kind of messy in the pans. But don't worry, your color's not ruined. All you need to do to fix this, once you're done mixing your color, is to take your brush, wash it with clean water, tap it so that it's just damp, then lightly swipe across the top of that pan, tap it onto your paper towel or rag, and just repeat until you've removed that top layer that's affected by the second color. The second thing is that you should be using watercolor paper, but even with watercolor paper, you're going to experience some warping. It's totally normal. The more water and paint you use, the more your paper is going to warp, and if you don't tape it down, it's going to warp even more. That's typically why you see artists taping their papers down, and that's just to kind of control the amount of warping that does happen. As this dries, it is going to settle down and become less warped, but it can still have some remaining warping. If once it's dry you find that it's still really warped, you can stack some books on it to press it, or you can even use an iron on low. If you really dislike warping, use thicker paper. Something like 300 pound will have very little warping compared to something like 140 pound. Our third thing is that white and watercolor is water and paper. Yeah, there are technically white gouache or white watercolors, and they can be used to help create some light. The most efficient way to add white in watercolor is to just let more of the paper show through by adding more water, or sometimes even just avoiding the area altogether. Anything you want to stay white on the page, just don't paint it. And our fourth has to do with backruns. You might have seen these after you've painted and you come back and see how there's this little area that kind of creeps up. These are called backruns. And backruns are caused by water settling in certain areas in little puddles. The puddle stays wetter for longer and the area around it dries faster. This creates an imbalance and it just affects the way that things dry, and the darker parts of the paint become kind of attracted to that border between the wet and the dry. But once you know what they are, they're easy to avoid. If you find that you have a big puddle of water, just simply tap your brush off to dry it, and then you can touch the tip of that brush to that puddle, tap and dry, and then grab a little bit more. By removing the puddle, you're going to stop the background from forming, or at least reduce how much it forms. If you have any other watercolor questions you're normally too afraid to ask, let me know them in the comments, and if it's something I can help with, I will do my best at answering it.